What makes Mondo the best? As a certified track builder, I have this question asked all the time. It's an important question, one that should not be taken lightly either. When selecting your facility's track surface, that is one of the most crucial aspects of the facility and one of the biggest decisions you will make. It will have a long-lasting impact on the facility. Track systems typically last 15 to 20 years. Some will last longer if properly maintained. So that decision is very long-lasting and will affect your potential to recruit. It will affect the potential for the athletes to perform at their highest level. It will affect their mental and physical well-being. It will affect the spirit of the school. It will affect what other schools will come to your facility to compete. It is a huge decision for the facility. A little bit about myself. As I said, I'm a certified track builder. I've built latex tracks, although not so much anymore since the IAAF no longer certifies did latex systems. I've built the urethane tracks. I've built Mondo tracks. I've built tracks that host high school state championships, NCAA indoor and outdoor championships. My latest achievement was the track that hosted the 2016 U.S. Paralympic Trials. Of course, the top performers there went on to Rio to perform for the United States. I currently work for a sports contracting company, full-service general contractor. We design and perform the work from the ground up, including base construction, drainage, asphalt, concrete curbs, track surfacing, striping, the certification for the facilities. Full service general contractor. The reason I bring this up is because I have a different viewpoint than what a manufacturer's sales representative would tell you. I've experienced some good stuff, some bad stuff with all the different track systems in the different weather. I've seen them perform at their highest, perform at the lowest, and I wanted to share my experiences with you guys. Now, of course, we could sit here and talk about some data such as shore A hardness, vertical deformation numbers, slip coefficient numbers, but I'm not going to go down that road with you guys today. That's information that is readily available from the manufacturer's representatives. Typically it's on their technical data sheet, and it's easy to get your hands on. What I would like to tell you is my number one reason that I think Mondo is the best is due to the relationship with the IAAF. Now, the IAAF is the world's leading governing body in the sport of athletics, which we call track and field. It is the governing body of the Olympics, the highest level of competition. They have their own worldwide championships, the IAAF championships. They govern the Diamond League, which is one of the top track competitions worldwide. They have many different roles. They are the ones who define the rules of the sport. They design the tolerances of the sport, how to measure a track, the rules of how a track meet should happen. They are the top dog, the big kahuna, the big cheese of the track world. One of their other roles is they establish and enforce certification testing for track surfaces. Now, the way this works is a manufacturer develops a new track surface. They provide a sample of that track surface and send it off to a third-party testing laboratory approved by the IAAF. And that laboratory will test that track surface for a certain list of criteria. They are very small windows, so that criteria is very detailed, and it is very tough to get those certifications. Mondo and the IAAF have been partnered together for over 40 years. Mondo is the official track surface of the IAAF. They have 11 consecutive Olympics partnered with the IAAF. They've been the surface for 8 consecutive Paralympics. So for over 30 years for the Paralympics and 40 years for the Olympics, Mondo has been the official track surface. There's been other events as well too, as like the IAAF World Championships and others. But the point here is that Mondo has been the only track surface for the IAAF and the Olympics for over 40 years. Mondo meets regularly with the IAAF. They ensure the athletes' needs are met as far as performance and safety. They consult new technology, and they predict the changing need of the sport. Partnered with IAAF more than any other manufacturer. Again, over 40 years, Mondo has been partnered with the IAAF. It's an incredible number. No other surface has been used at the Olympics for over 40 years. Again, one more time, 40 years with all these different track surfacing manufacturers available. Nobody has been selected by the IAAF for 40 years consecutively. It's incredible. IAAF has based their decision on a list here of imperfections, even as thickness, shock absorption, vertical deformation, friction, tensile strength, color consistency, drainage, performance, safety, consistency, and others. But again, 40 years. What an incredible number. To me, that's one of the biggest points of what makes Mondo the best system out there now. If the IAAF has partnered up with them for over 40 years, who am I to question the IAAF? This chart here represents some of the world's largest track meets where Mondo was the track surface. And as you can see, there are a bunch of them. They are the big championships. And again, it's noted there that 11 consecutive Mondo Olympics, 8 consecutive Mondo Paralympics. An incredible number. To better understand the differences between Mondo and the urethane track surfaces, we really need to stop and take a look at the industry as a whole and what role they play in the industry. Urethane is a $71 billion enterprise. That is billion with a B. Sports surfacing is just a small fraction of that $71 billion. And even less is the track-specific products. Urethane companies are not track companies, but use track surfacing as another outlet to sell their product. Track surfacing is a low priority to them. Urethane surfaces are not designed from the athlete up, but how the products can be sold for other uses. So think of it this way. Their viewpoint is more like, we have a product that we have made that's working great in many different industries. How can we push this product to other industries? This is completely different than Mondo's standpoint in the industry. Mondo is dedicated to the sports surfacing industry. So in other words, they go out and find a need, in this case, track surfacing. And they design a product around that need versus designing a product and finding a need. Sports surfacing is the primary focus for Mondo. Track surfacing is the primary product for Mondo. They're heavily invested in R&D for the sport, and all of their R&D is completely dedicated to the sport. They are not making another product for a different industry, but they are making this one product for this one industry. They utilize the latest technology, they are the industry leader, and they're consistently working with athletes and coaches to make improvements. Mondo is designed from the athlete up. Let's take a look at the manufacturing process. I use the term manufacturing very loosely when discussing urethane track systems. Reason being, urethane manufacturers only make the juice, not the complete system. And by juice, I mean the liquid urethane. It is often left to the installer to source the other components for the system, which would include primers, SBR, which are recycled tires, EPDM, which is man-made rubber, and other solvents. The true manufacturing process takes place at the job site by the installer. There is no controlled environment to manufacture the system. The process completely relies on the installer to source the correct materials, mix on a daily basis the correct blend of materials, and carefully and correctly react to the consistently changing climate conditions. This is very concerning. As an example, EPDM can be sourced from China for 10 to 13 cents a pound, or premium EPDM can be $1.20 to $1.30 a pound. But this is a big cost difference. Often, the urethane manufacturers don't know what EPDM is even in the track, because it is completely left up to the installer to source those materials. SBR is also a concern. Cheap SBR, which can be purchased again through China, has been known to have many problems with heavy metals and cancer-causing agents, as well as other really bad chemicals. Mixing the correct blend of materials is an impossible task to do consistently. Keep in mind, these guys are mixing thousands of buckets a day of this material. Give you an idea of what the installation is like. They put liquid urethane in a trash can. They mix in, by hand, either EPDM or SBR, take the trash can on the track, pour it on the track, spread it around with a notched rake or a squeegee. They will do this thousands of times. The other big impact that's left on the installer to deal with is the constantly changing climate conditions. High humidity is a problem, low humidity is a problem, high temperature is a problem, low temperature is a problem, winds a problem, rain's a problem, moisture in general is a problem. Temperature and humidity play a major role in the outcome of the final product. We'll talk about this more. Failure of the system often ends up being an argument between the urethane manufacturer, the installer, the other suppliers like EPDM or the SBR manufacturer. It quickly becomes a game of finger pointing if the track ever fails or has a problem. There is no one party responsible for the system. The other big thing that should be noted is rain can be catastrophic and create major cleanup effort. So the way this works is that urethane has different points in the curing process. One point is called the gel point. So if the rain hits a job during installation and the urethane has not hit the gel point, you'll end up with a big, soupy, sticky mess that is very difficult to clean up. Once you do get it cleaned up, then you have to find an appropriate means of getting the material off the job site and disposed of correctly. If the material did hit the gel point and gets hit by unexpected rain, then there's another host of problems that happen. The material will foam up, have to be demoed out the next day, and started all over. You have to ask the question, how consistent can the track be after mixing hundreds of buckets by hand and spreading thousands of pounds of rubber for 10 to 12 hours a day by hand? Let's watch a video here so that you can see the installation in progress. Okay, I'm going to stop the video right here so we can look at this. So as discussed, they've got liquid urethane in those trash cans. The guy pouring the black stuff into the trash can out of the 5-gallon bucket. That stuff is SBR rubber, that's the recycled tires. As you can see, it's not a very technical measuring process. The guy probably has marked a line in his bucket. He pours the SBR up to that line. He could be a pound short, 3 pounds heavy. There's really no consistent measuring. And of course he comes over and pours it into the bucket. The guy on the right side there is holding a mixing drill with a mixing paddle, and he is just blending the liquid urethane and the SBR together. Now I'm pretty confident that early in the morning this guy is going to pay a lot of attention. He's going to make sure that that is blended properly. But towards the end of the day, especially in the summertime, when it's 100 degrees, you've been doing this for 10 hours, he becomes a little tired, doesn't really pay attention as much as he should, and is probably not mixing each one of those buckets in a uniform manner. The third thing I want to point out is you look on the inside of the buckets, the big trash cans, you can see the red that's on the inside from the mixing process where they mix it up, they take it out there and they dump it. You can tell here that they're not cleaning out those trash cans as well as they should. So what happens is the red on the insides of the trash cans will actually cure throughout the day, start falling off the bucket, and they end up contaminating their own mix. Let's watch some more of the video. Here the guy is spreading out the urethane with a gauged rake. The viscosity of the urethane will be completely dependent upon the temperature, how hot it is, how cool it is, how much humidity there is. The second layer consists of putting urethane down again with the gauge rake. Mix it into the same mixing fashion with the trash cans. This time, before the urethane cures, they'll take shovel loads of EPDM rubber and throw it out onto the wet urethane. Once the urethane cures, the loose pieces of rubber will be removed. Whatever's stuck is now the wear layer. As you can see, it's not a consistent measuring process to throw the EPDM into the urethane. Some spots may have more than others. Some spots may be directional because they threw it all from one direction. As you can see, the process is not as technical as you would think. This is completely different from the way that Mondo is manufactured. The manufacturing process for Mondo, like I said, is completely different. To begin with, Mondo has an ISO certified manufacturing plant located in Italy. All Mondo product is 100% manufactured by Mondo. The installers are not purchasing anything other than what is provided by Mondo to install, so the installer is not doing any sourcing. Centralized production ensures quality and consistency. Mondo is made from natural rubber, not SBR or EPDM. 100% of all of the components are controlled by Mondo, meaning that Mondo goes out and sources the product. Mondo makes the selection of the best ingredients, and then on top of that, Mondo is the one who ensures that it is installed correctly, built into the formula. Mondo utilizes a process known as vulcanization, which separates Mondo from all the other competition. So what vulcanization is it allows Mondo to take two pieces, put them in at super heat and super pressure into a machine, and it will fuse those two so that there are no delamination issues down the road. So it works for two big benefits of the vulcanization process. One is it keeps the material together so that there are no separation issues, but it also allows Mondo to take two different technologies and fuse them together.
So you have technology for the backing of the material, and you have a different technology for the surface of the material or the wear layer, and now you can fuse those two together. Mondo completely manufactures a system, not just one component. Mondo is the most consistent product available, and this is because it is truly manufactured in a controlled facility where there are computers and people and machines to ensure this quality. The full warranty is provided by Mondo alone, so there is no finger pointing, there is no arguments about which product was installed. It is 100% fully warranted by Mondo. There is no mixing on site by the installers. Mondo ships out the materials, the installers install it. They do not have to prepare the material, mix the material as you do in urethane. Now that we've discussed a little bit about the manufacturing process, let's move on to the installation process. Polyurethane is problematic with installations. So many things, particularly the weather, affect the final product. Weather. Major issue with installing urethane. Microfoaming. Microfoaming is also another common problem, especially in the southeast where we're located, where the humidity levels are so high in the summertime. Microfoaming forms, sometimes it can't even be seen during the installation process. But what it is microscopic bubbles, really tiny small bubbles have formed in the urethane and are consistently through the urethane, and it makes it weak and breaks the bond much easier. Self-leveling urethane makes the track thicker in some areas than other areas. All urethane is self-leveling, so one of the selling points of the urethane from their salesman is that you can pour the bucket down, it'll self-level, and the top surface will be nice and level. Now the truth of that is it's filling in low spots, migrating to the low spots, making the high spots much thinner, which results in a very inconsistent track. Some spots will be much thicker than other spots. Unplanned cold seams. Every urethane installer does whatever possible that they can to avoid cold seams. Cold seams are a warranty problem. So usually when a urethane track fails, it fails from either the seams or from the outside edges of the track. The seams have to be carefully prepared to ensure that they will hold in place over a long amount of time. But at the end of the day, those cold seams are not molecularly bonded like the rest of the urethane install is. Temperature changes, viscosity of urethane. Got a couple good photos that I'll show you here in a minute of that. Cold seams tend to be an issue. We just discussed that. Edge treatment must be a concentration. Again, the two top failure points on a track are cold seams and from the edge. Often on urethane installs, you can come out a couple years later and pick up the edge of the track, and it's like a big blanket. You can pick it right up, where it just completely delaminates from the asphalt. Rain can be catastrophic. We spoke about that. Inconsistent measuring by installers. Again, we talked about that. Exhausted installers equal complacent installers. Moisture, dust, and contaminants in SBR and EPDM can be catastrophic. Now this is worth discussing. EPDM, and SBR for that matter, are valued upon different criteria, and one of those criteria is the content of the dust, how much dust is in it. Like we talked about earlier, the EPDM and SBR can be bought at different price point ranges. One of the big differences between those price point ranges is that the EPDM at the top level is guaranteed to have less than 4% of dust. That's one of the items. Same with SBR. Now what does that mean? If you have EPDM or SBR that has a lot of dust, because the manufacturing process where they throw this rubber in a machine and it chews it up creates a lot of dust. So if you have EPDM or SBR that has dust in it, and then it gets into the urethane. The urethane sticks to the dust and not the EPDM, and eventually breaks that bond, and breaks that bond very quickly and easily. Other contaminants could be with the EPDM, plasticizers. There is a amount of plasticizers that should be specified. We spoke a little bit about the SPR contaminants, the heavy metals, cancer-causing chemicals, other nasty chemicals that are in it. Fiber content is another big part of SBR. So similar to dust, SBR, particularly with the tires are held together with steel belts and fiber. They get the steel belts out fairly easily, and for the most part there's no remnants of steel in SBR at the high levels. But the fiber content, those little fibers, are almost impossible for them to get all of them out. So there is a limit of fiber content in SBR. SBR with heavy fibers in it will not bond with the urethane and cause the track to fail. Animal issues. With the urethane, when you install urethane, typically the way it works is the guys go out, they install all day long. That evening they clean up and leave the job site and allow the track to cure overnight, so the next morning when they come in they can start working on it again. A common problem with the urethane installs is in the evening when there's nobody around. Deer, raccoons, birds, squirrels, and even people often leave tracks in the track. So the next day after the track cures, the installers have to cut those areas out and patch them in. Many unplanned delays. Weather can kill a construction schedule when it comes to urethane track installations. Again, high temperatures, low temperatures, high humidity, low humidity, rain, wind, dew, a lot of sun, a lot of heat, just so many things go into that. Asphalt issues are often hidden. As a certified track builder, this one here bothers me a lot. With the urethane being self-leveling, they don't necessarily have to correct the asphalt because it would be hidden underneath the urethane. And even though the top of the urethane that you can see looks nice and level, the truth of it is, down where the urethane meets the asphalt, it could be far from level. There could be cracks in the asphalt that weren't addressed. Just very easy for them to hide those. This slide here is really just to kind of give you an idea of some of the weather effects that we were talking about: heat, cold, high humidity, low humidity, dew point. Just to touch a couple of the topics here is with the heat, it speeds up the cure process, the gel time, which means that the installers don't have enough working time and end up with more cold seams than they want, or the urethane sets up faster than they can throw EPDM on it. Viscosity is a big one. Again, I'm going to show you a couple pictures on that here in a second. High heat will cause the SBR and EPDM to settle differently within the urethane. Ideally, you'd want that mix to be 100% the same all through the levels. But the truth of it is, when it gets real hot, all those rubber pieces sink down into the urethane and get closer to the bottom than they do the top. Of course, it's completely opposite for cold weather. The complete opposite. Sometimes when they run the rake through the urethane, it'll take longer for the material to fall back into the rake marks. Really cold temperatures, close to freezing, they may leave rake marks altogether in that thing. High humidity, low humidities, dew points. Here's another big one: the effects on force reduction. From 32 to 68 degrees, that increases force reduction 16 to 18%. At 68 to 122 degrees, it decreases 5 to 7%. This is a major point here that doesn't get talked about enough. Force reduction is one of the top critical items to consider when you're choosing a track system. And for it to fluctuate this much should definitely be taken into consideration. 122 degrees sounds pretty hot, but in the southeast any August, July, and a lot of Septembers, you can go out there and shoot the track temperature, and you're going to be at 150 degrees easy by lunchtime. Heat effects with the urethane. This is what I was talking about with the viscosity changing. These two pictures here are at one job site on the same day. What this is a base mat. There's a urethane seal coat being applied over top of it. In the morning it's nice and cool, the humidities are still down low, the material's sitting on top of the base mat. That's how it's supposed to look. It looks very good in that picture. Picture on the right is a different story, same job site, same day. This is later in the afternoon. It got real hot, the humidity really kicked up. So what you're seeing here is that same seal coat applied at the same rate and the same method. Now you can see the urethane viscosity. The urethane is thinned out and it's sinking down into the base mat. I like this picture because it's a very good visual representation of what the installers see out there every day. Migrating EPDM. This is a problem, particularly with the full pore systems. So the three pictures you have here are, actually this track here has a little story that I should share. This track was installed with one of the top level full pore urethane systems. It experienced some problems within the first year. The urethane manufacturer blamed it on the EPDM manufacturer and vice versa. So this track here was resurfaced and again had another issue that had to be resurfaced yet a third time in I think 2, maybe 3 years. It was resurfaced 3 times. So what you see here, all the red that's laying on the side of the track, that's the EPDM. That's the part that they throw shovels on the wet urethane. Whatever sticks becomes your wear layer, and whatever comes off gets thrown away. There's actually a couple other things too we probably need to talk about with that EPDM top layer. One of the other big parts of it is the EPDM is a very expensive component of the urethane track system. So after they shovel the EPDM on the wet urethane, the urethane cures, they come back with a mechanical broom and broom up all the loose EPDM. All that loose EPDM gets put in a pile and is reused on another day, and they reshovel that same EPDM back into the wet urethane. And the process continues over and over. The issue with that is that the EPDM, when it gets broomed up with the mechanical broom, is picking up a lot of contaminants with it. It's picking up the dirt laying around, the dust that's fallen on it. It may pick up some gravel. Just a lot of little particulates get into that, and when they rebroadcast it the following day or the day after back into the wet urethane and start the process all over, those contaminants are also entering into the urethane track structure, which is not good. This picture here, or the 3 pictures, a couple different problems going on. Number one is, especially in the picture on the left and the one in the center, you can see that the track facility has a very nice slot drain, track slot drain. That's used to maintain all the water flow. Also to keep water off that artificial turf field they have in the middle there. But you can see the EPDM has completely clogged up that drain, and it's doubtful that it's passing much water, if any water, in that whole drain system now. What a nightmare for the facility to have to worry about cleaning that out. This EPDM here, for whatever reason, has broken free from the urethane. You can see it's a large amount of it. It is common on full pore urethanes to see EPDM migration. However, this one here is excessive. Typical would be maybe half this amount of EPDM. But if you're losing that much EPDM, you have to keep this in mind. This was broadcasted into the wet urethane. It had cured. A mechanical broom had taken up all the loose pieces. So all this has fallen off the track system after that portion of the installation, after the installers left, after they have signed off that all of that EPDM and that wear layer was secured in the urethane. This happens after the fact. Common problem with full pore urethane jobs or any kind of flood and chip installations. So that would be similar problem would be sandwich systems or full pour urethanes. A couple of big problems with this is particularly in the turns. Of course, they have this problem on the straightaways too, but the big problem is in the turns. The athletes feel this underneath their feet. They feel that it is loose underneath their feet. It will make them adjust their strides. It will make them roll their foot from the fifth metatarsal to the first metatarsal a little differently than what they should. Just the footing's not as secured. So what ends up happening is because they're adjusting their natural stride for running, they end up start having injuries, muscle injuries, joint injuries, just because they're not moving in the correct manner. Other items too is they could just flat out lose their footing and slip and fall. That happens quite a bit too. One good thing about Mondo is Mondo does not have this EPDM wear layer on the top like the urethane systems. Mondo is what they call calendared. So when the rubber is still being formed, it gets rolled through a machine and gets the texture molded into it. So there are no little pieces like this to fall off and make a mess like this particular facility. Not to mention just the eyesore of it. It's just it's ugly, looks bad for the facility, makes the facility look like they don't maintain it, although this particular facility does do a pretty good job of maintaining it. Maintaining their football field, soccer field, track, all their sporting venues. Worn areas. This is extremely common. What happens to a lot of universities, and particularly this one here with the pictures, is when they originally put this system in, they were given budget amounts so they could plan budgets out for the next 15, 20 years. What happened to this particular facility here was the urethane system did not hold up. As you can see, all the EPDM granules have completely worn off, and it is down to the bare urethane. In their budget, they were told that it would cost X number of dollars to come and resurface it. You would have to resurface this track every X number of years. This particular university here has found that not to be the case, that it wore out much quicker than they had thought. They do not have the budget in place to resurface this track, and what has happened even more now is it has gone so long in this bad a condition that now the urethane at the bottom level is falling apart. The urethane that you're seeing at the bare spots is not meant, it doesn't have the UV protection that the EPDM does on the top. So the UVs are just eating up this track now. The urethane's getting very hard, very brittle. It's a bad situation, especially for a major university with a track that has just a little bit of age on it. Doesn't get a ton of competition on it. It's really mostly a training track more than anything. But you can clearly see in the photos here that the areas that are down to the urethane are basically have no performance at all. You can never hold a track meet of any kind of importance at this track here. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they shut this track down. With it being a collegiate track, it's just unfit now and unsafe for the athlete. This is a full pour urethane, approximately 5 to 6 years old. Repair work, patches and urethane. Making patches in urethane is pretty much impossible to ever blend it back in to match with the existing track. A couple things contribute to this. One of the big ones is urethane typically is produced per order, so when you order a track, they produce it and ship that out to your track. What they don't do is produce large amounts of the urethane sitting on the shelf. Reason being is the urethane only has approximately 1 year lifespan on it, so they're not going to produce it, stick it on the shelf, and get it aging and risk losing that money. EPDM is another part of the problem too. And same with the urethane. You may not get the same dye lot when you come back out to do a repair. So you cut this out, you repair it, you try to get it to blend as much as you can, but at the end of the day, the EPDM and the urethane just doesn't match. This is a big problem for the athlete, and it's not really fair to the athlete. So the picture in the middle on the top, if I was running in lanes 4 and 5, I'd be very disappointed, would not be happy about my selection. I know that when I run across that subconsciously, I am going to step different. That's going to feel different underneath my foot. I see it visually very easily. I'm just gonna perform differently on that. Another issue with it is that when you come in and make the repairs, as we've already talked about a couple times, is the weather. It may be hotter, it may be colder, the humidity may be up when I install that patch versus the original install, which also causes some of the different shading and how the material forms, so why it feels different. There is actually an IAAF rule for Class 1 and Class 2 tracks specifically that have a color rule. So they produce a chart that, say, maybe 20, 30 different color reds are on this chart in an order. And they come out to the track, they see what color the track is, they match that red, and all repairs have to be at one of the red blocks beside that block on the color chart. It has to be touching the original block. These, you can tell, definitely do not match, and this is typically the case. So what ends up happening is, instead of just patching one little area, you end up patching the entire track, or not necessarily patching the entire track, but you patch those areas, and then you recoat the entire track. So you may have one little area to fix, and now it has cost you a lot of money and time, and you have to shut down your facility. So that's an issue. Another issue is just it's difficult to make these repairs using the same formulation that you install the original track. So a lot of times these repairs are made with a lesser product. It's a product more similar to a sandwich system than a full pour system. It's just easier to work with. It's common practice for these guys, for the urethane installers, to come in and make these repairs with this different material. Either way, they're very ugly. A lot of high-level competition meets would not allow these tracks. Of course, the IAAF would not approve these tracks. And, it's important that you know that you will definitely make a repair on a track, no matter what track it is, latex, urethane, Mondo. As an example, the Javelin runway, those last few feet of the Javelin runway, the particular way that the athlete does the javelin at the end and has to move his feet with those spikes is super aggressive, and it chews those areas up. That and the starting block locations on a track are usually the first two that have to be fixed, cut out, and patched. Unfortunately, with urethane, you can't provide attic stock, and it's because the material ages. Then it'll become no good by the time that you should have to make those repairs. This is different with Mondo. Mondos are rolled good. Attic stock is the norm to leave some attic stock. Usually we recommend that the facility find a place on a roof. They can put the attic stock up on the roof. It's going to match the dye lot. They can roll it out on the roof. It will fade with the track at the same rate, so we can come in and make a repair, matching dye lots, and it's a very, very close color match at that point because they put it on the roof and it faded out the same. But it all feels the same. The Mondo feels the same. New Mondo versus the old Mondo underfoot. You don't have these visual problems, and usually it matches on the color card, the IAAF color card, so it's not an issue. Tensile strength. This is a problem with urethane as well, especially when the design is for the urethane to not only cover the asphalt, but also to cover the concrete beside the asphalt. This is common at curbs, drains. In fact, these pictures here show this is where the oval meets a D area. There's a slot drain there, and the urethane has covered the slot drain. So what's happened in this picture is the asphalt and the concrete curb that the slot drain's in, because they're two different materials, they have moved at different rates. Your asphalt will shrink up over time. It's just a natural occurrence with asphalt, and your concrete will move at a different rate than the asphalt. So what's happened here is the asphalt and the concrete has moved at different rates. The track surface could not maintain that flexibility, that tensile strength. Just so you know, tensile strength is nothing more than how much force it takes to pull and rip that thing apart. And as you can see in this picture here, that the movement of the asphalt and the concrete was enough, and it has caused all these rips. The pictures on the right, you can see the crack in the asphalt and the concrete where those two are meeting. What's even more concerning here that you should look at on the pictures on the right is the thickness of the system. Keep in mind that's supposed to be a 2-layer full pore urethane system, and you can see that it is extremely thin right there where I'm pulling those pieces up. I would say that's probably less than a quarter inch, maybe a quarter inch. Definitely not the 13 millimeters that's required by the IAAF. As you can tell, this facility here will have to be fully demoed out and repaired now. Recoating. Recoating of existing urethane track often creates delamination issues. The picture on the left shows a full pore urethane that recently had a top coat of EPDM applied to it. That's the part that they throw shovels into the wet urethane. As you can see in the picture here, especially if you start looking close, if you can zoom in on the picture, you probably can see it just the way it is now, but you can see that the urethane suffered from microfoaming. Chances are this recoating of this track happened in high humidity time, and they put the urethane down. The installers didn't see the microfoaming, which is typical. They can't see it. They threw the rubber in it. They left. And then shortly after, these pieces start coming off from the outside edge. Because if you remember correctly, the two places a urethane track are most likely to fail are at cold seams and from the edge in. This is probably the start, well, let's just say definitely the start of a wide-scale problem for this track. The only solution for this is for them to demo off that top coat, probably have to grind down the underlying urethane to get away from that microfoaming. Do it again and hope it doesn't happen a second time around. You can tell by looking at the EPDM laying there on the curve that the EPDM looks like it's pretty solid, pretty full pieces. Definitely does not show signs that the EPDM was the failure here. I would definitely say it was the microfoaming. Picture on the right shows urethane, 2-layer system. Again, it's not vulcanized. This particular track, we had to saw cut some asphalt because there was an issue going on with the asphalt that had to be repaired. We saw cut it out. We found the problem pretty quick here. Just to the right of the thumb, you can see where the 2 layers have definitely delaminated from each other. But more importantly, that looks like a pretty straight, clean cut. So chances are this was a cold seam at the bottom layer that popped up. Nobody could see it because it was on the bottom layer. The cold seam allowed water to get down in there. The water broke down the bitumen in the asphalt, eventually went through a freeze-thaw cycle, cracked the asphalt all the way down, and that's what led to their problems and having to get this all replaced. It is very typical that a whole new set of problems come in play when you retop a urethane track. I would say it happens probably 25% of the time. Most of it is due to the weather more than anything. The microfoaming is a huge problem that we run into all the time. There's a common thought out there that you can take a urethane track and keep recoating it and extending the life of it. But it really needs to be looked at a little bit different. Number one is, as you keep recoding these tracks, eventually at some point that track system, the properties of that track system have changed completely from what they were originally when the IAAF signed off on them. The IAAF does not sign off on any system that's recoded more than once. And it's only particular systems that you can recode once and still get the IAAF classification. It's got to feel different underfoot. The more layers you put on it, it's got to react different. It just makes sense. But the bigger part of that is, even though you're putting new top coats on it and it looks good from the top, from outside the track looking down on it, it may even feel good underfoot. The real problem is that the bottom layers of that urethane are not being replaced, and that bottom layer of urethane that you can't see because it's got a nice pretty topping on top of it now is also breaking down and aging with the track. So eventually what ends up happening is you put good money on a bad problem and you just keep making it look nice, but it doesn't hold up in the long run. A couple installation horror stories, because everybody likes a good story, that I wanted to share with you guys is we had a project once that was delayed 45 days due to weather. Now this was a fairly small project, just a regular 8-lane oval track. I think there was 2 chutes, no D areas, so it was fairly small project. And it was delayed for 45 days. Now our typical installation on that project should have only taken maybe 2 weeks at most, probably more around the 7 to 10 day mark. But the 45 days on top of the original installation days was a schedule breaker. One thing that needs to be noted is often one rain event may cause multiple delays, multiple day delays. Reason being is the water will get down into the asphalt or the urethane system, depending on what kind of system. So even though you can't see the water, there's enough moisture in the system to prevent you from being able to work. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days for that to dry out, depending on the weather and the climate conditions. High winds delayed that project as well. The winds picked up real high. We couldn't broadcast rubber, the EPDM portion of it, so that delayed the project 2 or 3 days for the winds to move through. And then, of course, that project got so far behind schedule that we started running into low humidity days. So what happened to us on the low humidity days is typical is you go in, you work for the day, the urethane cures over the night, the next day you can prepare your cold seams and start working again. With low humidities, that urethane just didn't cure as quick, so what would happen to us is we'd work all day, leave at night for it to cure, come back the next day, and it would still not be cured enough and have to let it cure for an additional day before we could continue our work. But 45 days was an extreme. It is, I would say, out of all the track systems, the urethane is going to cause more weather delays than any other system. Another story was there's urethane totes delivered to a job site. Overnight, vandals opened all the totes. The next morning, the installer arrived back to the job site to find 15 to 20 totes had been poured onto the ground. Each tote contained 2,205 pounds, which is a metric ton, of liquid urethane. What a mess. That had to be a huge mess and just a freaking disaster as far as the environmental stuff goes. But that is a lot of urethane just to open the valve, let it pour out. If you remember right, the urethane is self-leveling, so it will just keep working its way across the whole facility until it finds a nice low spot. Another project we had a delay, and it was due to animals. Our project was at a coastal region. We left at night to let the urethane cure. When we came back the next morning, a bunch of seagulls had gotten into the urethane, and we had about 135 bird prints that all had to be cut out and patched back in. And nothing's worse than buying a brand new running track, and before you even get to use it, you're already putting patches in it, which is common. If this would have been, any 3 of these would have been a Mondo installation, number one, the weather doesn't delay the Mondo as bad as the urethane because we can work up to the rain. The Mondo stays here. It's covered by the Mondo because it's not a liquid product, and the Mondo will protect it enough that typically the next day when we come in, we can usually dry the asphalt with torches enough to start working again and not be a problem. Of course, high winds, that doesn't delay the project any. Humidities that delay the projects with the Mondo. With the second story, Mondo doesn't have anything like this that vandals can get into and just create a disaster for the facility. We would have had the most they could have done was pushed over one of our rolls of Mondo. We would have just went and picked it back up the next day and went back to work. Animals are not a concern with the Mondo. Again, it's covered with Mondo, so there could have been 500 birds across that thing. It would not have left one spot. We would not have been making a single repair the next day due to the animals. That also goes with footprints from people too. People can walk across it too, and again, we don't recommend it, but it won't cause any negative impact. Alright, let's talk about installation for Mondo. Because Mondo is manufactured in a controlled environment and at a facility, there are no weather concerns with the product. There is no mixing of materials on the job site by the installer. It really comes out in rolls. We glue it down just like any other flooring type. It really is as simple as installing any other type of flooring. Mondo can be installed all the way up to the point where rain comes in. We cover up the Mondo. The Mondo protects the adhesive by itself just because Mondo itself is not a liquid product. It's a solid product. We can do that. There are no changes with temperature and humidity. We can work in the high temperatures. With low temperatures, we try not to work below freezing. There are some precautions we can do to work just underneath the freezing mark, but we typically don't. No concerns at all with humidity. Mondo is installed by troweling Mondo adhesive in. This system lets the installer visually inspect as he's troweling and the second guy as he's rolling in the material to make sure that it's completely 100% covered with the adhesive. The concerns with the animal and people is really not an issue with the Mondo. We talked about that a second ago with the horror stories. We can glue the Mondo, roll it in, and if something comes across it, it's no big deal. No catastrophes with the weather. We don't have to worry about rain coming in and the next day we're demoing out a mess and trying to find a place that we can properly dispose of that mess. All seams are planed with Mondo. Mondo does have a lot of seams. The installation process is proven. We know where our seams are going to be before we get to the job site. We plan for our seams. We do not have the cold seam issue that urethane guys have. Really goes without a problem. Installation method ensures track tolerances are met. By this I mean the asphalt. If you remember earlier we were talking about the self-leveling properties of urethane and that they can hide a lot of issues with the asphalt. The asphalt is something that should definitely be addressed. If you don't get your asphalt right, then your track system is going to suffer and not be there for the duration of what you're intending it to be. Installation method does not allow for asphalt issues to be hidden. That's very important. As we spoke about earlier, you do not want to hide those. You want to build those. You want to build your track correctly. Technology. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, the differences between urethane and Mondo. Probably the strongest topic that we can discuss. Basically, there's been few advancements in urethane in the last couple of decades. As we talked about earlier, urethane is a $71 billion industry used for a lot of different other industries. And basically the science of urethane is pretty much maxed out. The same technology we had back in the 80s, the same technology we're putting in today. So when it comes down to urethane tracks, whatever you bought in the 80s is pretty much the same thing you're buying today. The real only notable improvement in the last few decades is really due to health concerns for the installers. Used to have a problem with urethane. It was the off-gassing was giving a lot of installers some very serious health issues. So the urethane manufacturers had to make a change there. It really comes down to dealing with the TDI, MDI content of the material is what the change was. Urethane's basically a commodity. Every manufacturer has the same formula. As I said, the science is out there. They've ran through the science so much, they've basically got this stuff maxed out. It's a commodity. Every urethane manufacturer, for the most part, is the same. I won't say all of them. There are some differences. But for the most part, when it comes down to track construction and track surfacing, your top players, your top 4 or 5 manufacturers are basically the exact same formulas. Not much to change. Urethane systems are limited to what they can change. Common thing that I hear is urethane manufacturers telling the facilities that they can change the formula to give the facility the exact, to meet their exact needs. That's not true at all. In fact, no track should be built that's not IAAF certified. The product should be certified by the IAAF to ensure safety and a level of performance is met. So when the urethane manufacturers start adjusting with the formula, it is no longer an IAAF system. It just plain out should not be allowed. Like latex in the old days, latex eventually evolved to the point where it couldn't evolve anymore. That's where urethane started coming into the market and making an impact. But with urethane being topped out as far as advancements in technology goes, it's a matter of time and they'll eventually not be able to evolve to the demands of the better athletes. And as we all know, the athletes are getting bigger, better, faster, stronger, and they're just so much better that the needs of those athletes is just growing and growing at a very rapid pace. Now Mondo, on the other hand, is a totally different story. Mondo has a strong history of raising the bar and introducing new, fresh technology. They can do that mostly because of their controlled manufacturing and vulcanization process. Mondo is able to fuse multiple technologies together. Let me give you an example of that. With Mondo Super X 720, it has a wear layer that is from a product that was just fantastic with the wear layer. And then they took the backing of another product that had just phenomenal backing to it and the properties of it, and they're able to fuse those two different technologies together through the vulcanization process. This is different from urethane, where everything has a baseline with urethane. Everything has to be an MDI material or a TDI material. They have to be able to molecularly bond. Mondo's been able to figure out a way to surpass that and grow the technology to something even better than that. This is what separates Mondo, one of the major things that separates Mondo anyway, from the competitors is their controlled manufacturing and that vulcanization process. Mondo is extremely predictable and accurate in the manufacturing process, which allows them the flexibility to fine-tune formulas. Since they're not mixing all these chemicals on site with an installer that's battling different climate changes and different properties of sourcing different EPDMs, SBR, and so on. Since Mondo's doing all this with computers in a controlled environment with machines, they're able to really fine-tune those formulas and control exactly how much of each material go into each product. Mondo's performance backing has evolved by changing the formula and adding the science of geometry. If you look at the backing of any Mondo product, It's got geometry on the back. The hexagon is the most current shape, and if you're a science guy, you understand the importance of the geometry and how the geometry can harness the energy coming from the athlete and push it back up through the system back into the run. Urethane, on the other hand, does not have any shapes. It's poured on the ground. It just forms to whatever the ground is. It's very flat and smooth on the bottom and does not have these properties of geometry. In fact, it has a major lack of the science of geometry. The innovative geometry of the backing has allowed Mondo to be the industry leader. Again, nobody else can match the Mondo product. The durable wear layer has allowed Mondo to provide the most durable product available. Probably the best thing I've got to tell you to demonstrate this is we do a lot of work with the military. And they have some specialized training that your universities or high schools or most of your sports facilities don't have to attend with, but the military does. We try to primarily put Mondo on all military projects. Reason being is the urethane just flat out can't keep up with the amount of abuse that comes from the military. A typical college track is being ran on for the most part through a track season of just a couple months long. They're using specialized shoes. They're specialized athletes. And for the most part, most universities don't open up their track to the public. However, in the military, one job in particular that we have at a Marine Corps Institute gets about 3,000 to 5,000 Marines on it a week. 5 days a week, maybe up to 7 days a week, depending on what units are at that base at the time. They'll run on tennis shoes, some will come with track shoes, some are in combat boots. They really can't control the footwear as much as a university. The reason we use the Mondo is because the Mondo does hold, and the Mondo will stay there, still holding that 15 to 20 year life expectancy, where the urethane just can't hold up to it. In particular, a full pore urethane that has the EPDM broadcasted into the wet urethane. The EPDM just continuously breaks off, and usually within a year to 2 years, that facility has to be retopped. And then it becomes a cycle of every 2 years, if you're lucky 2 years, having to retop that facility. The science and technology that Mondo is using is a lot of the same technology that many athletic shoe companies are utilizing now, with the properties of the soles of the running shoes as well as the science of the geometry of the soles. Mondo uses science like biometrics like no other. As they advance, so will Mondo. Mondo 5 years ago is not the same as Mondo today. Mondo 5 years from now will not be the same as Mondo today. As technology continues to improve and the demands of the athletes change, so does Mondo. Mondo 5 years ago is not the same as Mondo 10 years ago. It continues to grow, it continues to get better, and it continues to outperform the older products. Mondo's always been the leader in technology, but recent advances in science is allowing that gap to grow exponentially. This graphic here just demonstrates some of the benefits of Mondo versus urethane. Basically, the same stuff that's in all the literature packages, but I just wanted to show it to you so that you can see the scientific thought that goes into designing new Mondo. As you can see, it's a lot different than what the urethane manufacturers would have. That's basically because, if you remember, the urethane manufacturers designed a product and then came out to figure out what industries could use that product, versus Mondo, which went out and found a need and designed a product for the need, not a product and find a need. This is a pretty good graphic. Explains a lot of different things here. The foot impact, which is force reduction, rolling of the foot, lateral support, loading phase, the traction, the bowstring effect. Talks a little bit about the seamless construction, the vulcanization process, biomechanical response, and makes a focus on the consistency of the product. Also note that it's low VOC emissions. It's got Green Guard certificate, and it has a special indoor version available as well. Okay, let's discuss facility customization. Multicolor track layouts have become the norm. Facilities now need to give an identity to the school or their facility. That's a modern requirement. Solid color tracks are a thing of the past. With urethane, multicolor track designs can be achieved. However, there are multiple ways to achieve that goal, all of which create cold joints. And if you remember correct, cold joints are the enemy when it comes to urethane tracks, because the 2 points that most urethane tracks will fail are at all cold joints and from the outside edges in. So very problematic. Transitions in color become the weak point for the track system, which is really a shame, because the idea of having all the different color patterns and being able to separate yourself from other facilities should not have a negative drawback. Multiple colors in regards to urethane are usually at an added cost. Some of them are pretty heavy depending upon color. The colors black and red are the cheapest of all colors. They run at the same price point, and it's because of the raw materials that are needed to make those urethane colors. However, when you get to the other colors, dependent on the color, the price point changes some colors pretty dramatically. Other colors are problematic by themselves with urethane. As an example, some of the shades of blue or amber, turning them to a more of a green color over some time than the blue. Mondo, however, is a little bit different because of the fact that it's a prefabricated product. There are no issues with the multicolored designs. Again, because of it's being built in a factory in a controlled environment, where they can fine-tune formulas. They can put a lot of stabilization factors into their colors, making them have the ability to do custom colors to match particular Pantone numbers that a school or university may require. The installation process makes this a very easy task because it's a rolled good, and our installation process, it is no problem for us to change colors in the middle of installation. Again, we're not cutting that back out and creating a cold seam or have cold seam issues like urethane does. Typically, there's either no cost associated to the multicolor designs, and if there is, it's a very minor cost. Kind of give you an example. If you just have an oval and you want to do alternating lane colors, there's not going to be any additional cost. It's the same material regardless. However, if you want to do a facility like maybe the LSU facility there in the middle picture, there's a little bit more waste involved that would have to be calculated into the cost, but it would be very minor. Nothing like some of the colors in urethane will cost you when you start looking at a percentage change of price. Another big benefit to Mondo in customizing your facility is we can water jet inlaid logos. So if your school or university or facility has a logo, very simple process. We just request that you give us a vector file. We take that to the water jet cutter, and he can cut that pretty exact with a CNC machine or a water jet cutter or some tool of that nature. And we can really do some very detailed logos and inlay them into your facility so that logo will probably outlast the track itself. Facility maintenance. This is a crucial part to the life of any track. This should be one of the major points that you want to make sure you put a check mark in the box when selecting your track facility or your track product. Clean, sharp track can enhance the facility. Athletes are more confident on a well-maintained surface. cleaning a track for big events or recruitment day is a must. With urethane, you're pretty limited to how you can clean your track. So basically all you can do is take a leaf blower, blow off the track to get the debris off, and a regular water hose to rinse it off. You can't use any pressure washers or scrubbers. That will void the warranty because those systems can't, particularly with the EPDM that's broadcasted in the wet urethane. That urethane will not hold those EPDM particles in place if you take a pressure washer or scrubber to it. Tracks must be resurfaced every 5 to 8 years max if it's well maintained with urethane, and you don't have attic stock materials available, so your patchwork will look like those pictures that we discussed earlier, or you have to spend the extra money and resurface the entire track. All patchwork will stand out, as we've already learned. With Mondo, because it's prefabricated, attic stock can be left to ensure die-lot match. We discussed that a little bit. It's always recommended that they put the Mondo, I recommend that they put the Mondo on the roof someplace out of sight, out of the way, until they need it, so it stays the same. It makes those repairs very easy, and everybody's happy with those repairs. Attic stock will be used at aggressive areas such as the Javelin runway and the starting block locations. Mondo track can be restored by using a ride-on scrubber, easy for any facility maintenance crew to learn how to do. This is fantastic. We've seen some very old tracks that were very dirty and nasty. We come in with a scrubber, we clean them up, they look like brand new. This is great for the days you have the recruits coming in that you're trying to pick up for your facility, or if you have a big event, you want your track to look nice, especially those that are on TV. Very easy process to do. You can typically clean a 8-lane oval in a day. If it's got a bunch of D areas and stuff like that, maybe 2 days. Very simple. You don't really have to go out and hire anybody to do it. This is something that your existing facility maintenance crew can handle themselves. And it's great. The cleaning formula that is recommended is designed specifically to work with the rubber. It will rejuvenate and give a longer lifespan to your track if you keep it cleaned and maintained. A couple of pictures of some urethane tracks that the maintenance just got out of hand. It's actually, these particular pictures here are health hazards. As you can see in some of the pictures, there's some mold growing, some kind of spores growing in areas. It's very nasty. So what's happening here is dirt and debris are falling onto the track. It could be spilled Gatorade, blood, sweat, tears. It could be anything. Fertilizers. They get into the urethane system at the top, and because of the EPDM, it gets trapped down in there and has no place to go. Most facilities don't take a hose out there and rinse it off, but even when they do rinse it off with that low pressure hose, it may not get all that out regardless. But you can see some of these pictures are really nasty. Another thing is a lot of tracks are designed in floodplains, and this is because of available space to the university, and they can put it out there, and most towns or city ordinances will give a variance for it to use that space up. What happens to a lot of tracks is they get flooded, and some tracks are even designed correctly in a great spot, like the one we saw with the migrating EPDM, where the drain system has just been clogged up with the EPDM, that track potentially could back up now and have these same problems. Once a track gets flooded, it looks similar to some of these pictures here. In fact, the runway all the way on the right top picture is from a track that was flooded, and they had no way to clean it. Once your track gets this dirty here, you can't even really retop it. The only thing you can do is demo off that top layer, if not the whole facility, depending on how far these microbes go down into the system, and retop the whole facility. Either way, it makes you feel like you need a shower after walking on one of these facilities. Falsehoods. There is a lot of information out there that is not completely accurate. Some of these things should be addressed. Mondo tracks are hard and only good for speed, not good for everyday training. This is the most heard falsehood by the urethane manufacturers that I hear. It's pretty simple. The IAAF has set a standard to measure the key elements, which Mondo exceeds all of them. Again, like we talked about earlier, it's a very small window. The details are very specific. So to say that Mondo is too hard is opposite of what the IAAF says. And then, on top of that, if you really look into the data, the shore A hardness and all that, that's available by the manufacturers, you're going to see that Mondo is not too hard. In fact, Mondo is the most predictable and consistent track surface available. And again, that has to do with the manufacturing process. Mondo has different systems to fit your needs. Not everybody's needs are the same. So as an example, Mondo has a product called Mondo WS. This product is the fastest product on the market. This is for the top elite athletes who are trying to shave off a thousandth of a second off their time. Very fast. It is a little harder than the other products, but yet still falls within the IAAF guidelines. Then you have other products too, like Mondo Super X 720, which takes that top layer of that high-speed system, combines it with a different backing to it through the vulcanization process, which gives it a little bit more cushioning for the long-term training, but still gives you the availability to be your best on, to set your best times, to get your highest jumps. Then there's a product Super X. This is back to talking about the military. Usually this is the product that we put them in. It is great for long-term training. It's where speed and performance is not needed to the thousandths of a second like the other products. Mondo tracks outlive technology. So a lot of the manufacturers, the urethane manufacturers, will identify existing Mondo projects. Again, Mondo tracks can last 20 years, no problem. And they'll find some of these tracks that are 20, 25 years. And they'll use that as the comparison, which is not accurate. Number one, the technology back then is not what it is today. And number two is the track's just old. It's old, it's been abused, it's 20-some years old. It is going to be a little bit harder. Mondo tracks have been coined the 20-year track, and that's because they live for 20 years. There's a lot of old Mondo tracks still out there, but not nearly many urethane tracks at that age out there at all. They just don't live that long. In fact, most urethane tracks are doing great the last half of that 20 years without having to be replaced. Another important thing is tracks that are too soft are as big, if not a bigger problem, than tracks that are too hard anyway. It's a whole different range of injuries that you're more prone to receive, more soft tissue and muscle and fatigue injuries. You do not want a soft track. A soft track takes all the energy out of the runner and returns very little back to the runner, when really what you want is that track surface to absorb that energy and give it back to the runner. Tests have shown that athletes with longer strides on Mondo than any other track surface. This means that athletes who compete but have not trained on Mondo may overstretch muscles, and in the jump and hurdle events where a certain number of strides are required to reach a specific point, may miscalculate their stride. The better solution is for athletes to familiarize themselves with the Mondo effect in advance of the competition, or better still, train regularly on Mondo so that they can capitalize on its performance-enhancing characteristics. Athletes that have this advantage invariably achieve personal best. So the fact is, all your high-level track meets, nowadays a lot of the high school upper meets from state high school to national meets. Definitely the NCAA. And now we know that the IAAF, all these upper level big track meets are going to be performed on Mondo regardless. Why would you not want to have your athletes train on that same system? Why would you want them to train on a very soft track system just to go compete when it really counts on something that's totally foreign to them? Just never made any sense to me. And to say that the tracks are only good for speed and put that in a negative light is crazy. Come on, this is track. Track is meant for speed. When was the last time you heard a track athlete say, man, I wish I could go over there and run real slow? Better yet, it's like a race car driver that says, you know what, I finished last place, I'm real happy with that because I got 30 miles to the gallon. It means nothing. Mondo tracks get hard over time, another falsehood. Here's the truth of it, guys. All rubber, SBR, EPDM, and natural rubber, get hard over time. The process is called oxidation. It happens to the urethane, it happens to the latex, and it happens to Mondo. The difference is at the rate that it happens at. Mondo's newest technology now includes a formula that improves the oxidation resistance by 200%, which is fantastic. That is great. Mondo's centralized manufacturing process guarantees the highest quality ingredients. We've talked about that. That's their centralized manufacturing at their facility, at their ISO certified plant. Urethane must be recoated every couple of years. So the bad thing about that, a couple things. One is the cost, one is closing down the facility, but more importantly is you're putting that nice, good, pretty layer right on top of the system, but all that oxidation is still happening at the lower levels of that system that you cannot see. Urethane systems are continuously recoated throughout the life of the system. Each recoat requires the track to be recertified. Again, something else that never gets looked at is the recertification process. When you come in and recoat a track, it must be recertified. You can't have a certified track, recoat it, and it hold its certification. That's just not how it works. But then the big question that we've asked already is how many resurfacing layers change the performance? So at what point do you put so much of that urethane with EPDM on top and just layer after layer after layer after layer before it takes all the performance that system was designed for, takes all that performance and throws it right out the window? Mondo tracks have too many seams. Mondo's installation process is proven. Unlike urethane installation, seams are not a worry. There are no cold seams with Mondo like we've discussed with the urethane. Which, as a reminder, cold seams are a major warranty item for urethane. All the seams are planned with Mondo. We know where the seams are going to be. We know how to prep them. It's not an issue at all. Mondo seams typically do not need to be addressed for around the 15-year mark. This is very true. Of course, there is the occasional one little tiny seam that needs to be repaired, unlike the urethane systems, which you have to completely cut those out, put a patch in, and you have that patch that we've talked about a couple times. We can come in and fix a seam without even affecting the Mondo. It's no sweat at all. Seam repair is quick and easy. We usually what happens is around that 15-year mark, we'll set up an appointment, come in. It takes 1 to 2 guys, usually a full day, and then go around the entire facility and fix it all up. Another thing that we've done recently with a lot of success is just train the facility maintenance people how to fix those seams. Doesn't cost the facility any more money. You already got those guys on staff. It's really easy to do, and they can do it without having to schedule a crew in to come and fix it. Urethane seams, particularly cold seams, can be catastrophic. We've learned that already. Urethane seam repairs require the track to be cut out and patched back in. That's a big negative. Because Mondo is not self-leveling, it will follow imperfections in the asphalt. Alright guys, back to me being a certified track builder. This one here, it pushes my buttons every time I hear it. So, Every track construction guideline published by the IAAF, the NCAA, ASBA, which is American Sports Builders Association, clearly identifies the importance of having the asphalt correct. Every Mondo track installation includes the asphalt inspection and an asphalt correction process to ensure quality and performance. It is the professional responsibility of the certified track builder to correct the asphalt and build the track correctly. Imperfections with the asphalt should never be corrected with the track surface. Mondo installation has a process to level the asphalt, and the tracks are consistently the same thickness at all areas of the track. Alright, let's talk about that a little bit more. So, one of the biggest and crucial items in constructing a running track from ground up is the asphalt and the preciseness of the asphalt that's required to build a track. If the asphalt is not built correctly, a lot of different things happen, but some of the things that we're looking for is compaction, planarity, and levelness of that track, and slope. So if they're saying that it's a negative because Mondo's not self-leveling, they're crazy, because it should have nothing to do with it. So if you're fixing your bad asphalt imperfections with a self-leveling system, just because it'll be level on the top, does not mean that track system is level. It's going to cause you a lot of problems. So in other words, if you have a low spot in that track, and even though that you're filling it in with urethane and the top's nice and level, eventually over time that track's going to experience some problems. It's going to get some water down in there. That water's going to find the low spot and sit in that pocket underneath the track. What will happen is over time that will break the bond between the urethane and the asphalt, and you'll start having problems with the track delaminating, the bond breaking with the asphalt, or bubbles in the track surface. This is a basic requirement for building a track, is to fix the asphalt first. And every guideline out there will tell you that you must fix the asphalt. You do not cover the asphalt issues, and you specifically do not fix asphalt imperfections with track surface. Now, when you do fix your asphalt correctly and everything is within the guidelines, well, then the Mondo will be the exact uniform thickness all the way around the track, which will guarantee you that the track is going to perform the same everywhere. It's going to react the way it was designed, the same everywhere. There are not going to be any differences in the track. So what happens with the urethane, when you have spots that are thicker than other spots on the track, that track performs different at those spots. The runner can usually feel that under his feet, and if he can't, definitely the force reduction is being altered in some form. It's easy to check the thickness of your track. It can be checked with a tool called a floor tester. You can buy that from a lot of different places. The ones that we use are from SMG. They cost us, I don't know, roughly 25 to 50 bucks, somewhere around there. And we can come out there and give exact measurements on the depth of your track. We do this all the time. We walk tracks all the time. Our tracks and our competitors' tracks. And what we do is we take this floor tester around and we check the track at many, many locations and record those thicknesses. And it's common to see a wide range of variations in urethane systems. Kind of give you an idea. For most major universities that we walk and check, it is nothing for us to see a thickness range of 6 millimeter to 21 millimeters. In fact, I walked a track about a month or so ago and did the same test, and these are the numbers that I found. Keep in mind, this was an NCAA track that wants to hold conference championships on it, and has for several years, and that's the system that they're running on, 6 millimeters to 21 millimeters. And it just so happens that this track has a history of injuries to the athletes that I'm sure is associated with the different thicknesses. Another thing too that's noted at that university is they have not set a major time at that school in decades. And again, it probably has a lot to do with this range of thickness. 6 millimeters to 21 millimeters is pretty significant. And also keep in mind that per the IAAF rules, you need to be 13 millimeters. So that automatically is violation to the rules. And let's talk about that for a second, because the rules say 13 millimeters at a minimum, or at all locations. However, when you really look at a urethane specification, the way they word it is 13 millimeters on average. Those are not the same. That's not apples to apples. Uh, Having spots at 6 millimeters and other spots at 21 millimeters, even though they may average close to 13 millimeters, it by no means has the performance of 13 millimeters. Mondo can't be resurfaced. This one cracks me up every time I hear it, because there are major NCAA championships held on resurfaced Mondo tracks at some of the largest universities in the nation. Mondo has many tracks around the world that were resurfaced again with new Mondo. Mondo's process includes inspecting the asphalt, the original surface, preparing the existing Mondo to receive new, and installing new Mondo. Due to urethane bonding and tensile strength deficiencies, Mondo cannot be installed over urethane. However, there are some tracks out there that have Mondo in place and were top coated with urethane, but the tensile strength of the urethane does not allow Mondo to do that. By the time a facility is considering resurfacing a Mondo track for the third time, because this is rare, typically we only resurface a Mondo track once, because by the third time it has aged approximately 30 to 40 years. At this age, the Mondo has outlived the asphalt. Typical lifespan of asphalt with Mondo is the surface is 25 to 30 years, which is a big improvement over 15 to 20 years that the urethane usually protects the asphalt. Asphalt does not live forever. Like we talked about earlier, the asphalt over time will shrink up and become brittle. But the quality of surface that you put on top of that asphalt will dictate, or at least attribute to, how many years that asphalt will be good. Removing existing Mondo surface will destroy the asphalt. Again, we're back to building the asphalt correctly. So if that asphalt is built with the right tolerances, doesn't hold water, it's got the correct slope on it, that's not going to be a problem. It has the right compaction to it, it's made up of the right components, this is not going to be a problem. Asphalt should meet a design, compaction, temperature, and installation requirements set forth by ASBA, American Sports Builders Association. It is the professional responsibility, once again, of the certified track builder to correct the asphalt and build the track correctly. When the asphalt has been built correctly, there is no issue. Due to Mondo's excellent durability, most facilities' asphalt expectancy has expired by the time for resurfacing. Again, Mondo is going to last 15 to 20 years for you. You resurface that, and you're going to get another 15 to 20 years. And by that time, you've hit the life expectancy of the asphalt, and it's time to redo the asphalt. By the way, on another note, no matter what the track system is, latex, urethane, or Mondo, the asphalt does have a life expectancy, and it will have to be torn out and redone at particular intervals. Cost comparison. It is true that Mondo has a higher front-end cost than urethane at the initial installation. However, the urethane guys like to play numbers with these games and project the price out to usually 10 years, which is a reasonable life expectancy for the urethane. However, when you really compare these costs, you need to spread that out through the years a little bit further, because the Mondo, again, is going to last you from 15 to 20 years. So once you really start putting these numbers together, you can see the long-term investment is really cheaper using the Mondo versus urethane track surfaces. One of the big contributing factors in this price comparison is replacing the asphalt. as you can see in this comparison, that come around somewhere between year 10 and year 15, you're going to take that full urethane system off and you're going to replace the asphalt. However, Mondo is going to get you another life cycle through it before you have to do the same. Other costs that are not associated with direct dollar values that are in this comparison is the cost to close down your facility. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in this comparison. Then there's a cost associated with the risk of just having another issue with the new installation. And then there's the value to accept patch repairs. What dollar value do you put on having to accept those patch repairs that we've looked at through this whole presentation? But yet again, another cost that's not on this particular slide here is the cost of not having your athletes at their highest potential. The cost of having them in a second-rate track system when the top runners in the world are all running on something much better than what your facility has. And then there's other costs that we can go back to the first slide and talk about: the impact on recruitment, the impact on your athletes' mental and physical well-being, just the overall excitement at your university or school. There's a lot of costs that you can put on this comparison sheet other than just direct dollar values. So, at the end, it's a pretty easy answer that we started off with. The question at the beginning was, what makes Mondo the best? So, if you want a track system that guarantees a consistent, predictable, and advanced biomechanical response, then you want a Mondo track. Reason being, let's look at the checks here. Number 1, it's aligned with the IAAF. And not only is it aligned with the IAAF, but it's been the IAAF surface for over 40 years. Over 40 years it has been the surface for the Olympics. And not just over 40 years, but the only track system in 40 years to be allowed to be in the Olympics. It's the only surface that's approved by the Paralympics. Wheelchairs and prosthetic limbs can often void the warranty for urethane systems. Wheelchairs specifically are a problem for full pore urethanes where you have the EPDM broadcasted on the top. Those wheelchairs, the friction from the wheels themselves just work different than feet, where the foot hits the surface and springs off of it. Where the wheelchair tires, the friction is continuous, and at times will have a turning little torque to it that'll rip off all that EPDM. And it should be noted too that Paralympics is one of the fastest growing sports in all of sports. You look back to what the University of Illinois is doing with the Paralympic sports, it's incredible. The Wounded Warrior projects for the military, incredible. This is a very fast growing sport, and if you're not preparing to have Paralympics at your facility, you may be making a huge mistake. Mondo is the industry leader, committed to the sport, the only industry, or the only track surfacing manufacturer that's truly committed to the sport. It's not a sidebar business that a larger industry is looking at. This is the industry for Mondo. Mondo's manufacturing, quality, and control. Again, we're talking about centralized manufacturing, where you have 100%, or Mondo has 100% control of what materials are going in, where they're being sourced from, how they're being mixed, and the use of mechanical and computer equipment to ensure that those mixes are 100% accurate. And another big one is the fact that they're building the manufactured system, which again is the only true manufactured system in the track world. But they're building it in a controlled environment where weather is not making an impact at all. The only true manufacturer of track system, 100% of the system, not just the urethane, 100% of the system. So the installer is not going out and sourcing and putting in the products of his choice. That Mondo is actually controlling that, which allows Mondo to be a one-source warranty provider as well, and no arguments with secondary manufacturers such as EPDM and SBR. Because of Mondo's ease of installation, it's the lowest risk of installation errors. The impact of weather is just so small. It's easy to install. The range of possible problems is much smaller than urethane. It's just a lower risk all the way around. And the technology. Mondo has the best technology available in the marketplace, hands down right now, which again is one of the reasons why the IAAF has partnered with Mondo for over 40 years. Customization of facilities without any risk. Again, this is the modern age where track facilities are no longer just a red oval or a black oval. Now they have many colors, they're alternating lane patterns, they're inlaid exchange zones, the runways are inlaid, logos are now being put in all over the track facilities. Easiest and most effective maintenance. I don't know if there's a more powerful slide than that slide that I have with the dirty tracks, the fungus and stuff that's growing on those things. It's just totally disgusting. Not only would I not run on that, but I would not let any of my friends or family run on that track system either. Mondo's easy to keep clean, to keep away from those health risks. All it takes is a scrubber that most universities or facilities already have, because again, Mondo is like installing a typical floor, and so is the cleaning and maintenance. Making a patch or a seam repair, not a problem with Mondo, because Mondo has the ability to give the university the attic stock that would be needed later. So, the biggest check mark out here. This is a fact. Mondo is the fastest track system and has been for over 40 years. Again, we're talking about track. Nobody wants to run slow on track. Track is about speed. Track is about jumping higher, running longer. This one fact right here is and should be the overriding fact for almost any other decisions that you make with choosing a track surface. You don't want to be slow, you want to be fast, and you want to be safe, and you want to be consistent. That definitely is Mondo. That is why Mondo is the best.